Regardless of whether you are a small or large organization, the transition project should ultimately consist of the 3 following steps. 1. Inventory your leases. 2. Make a plan for recording all of your leases on the balance sheet as lease liabilities and right-of-use assets. And then 3. Execute your plan in time to meet your compliance deadline. Once you've completed gathering your lease inventory, it's time to develop a plan for transition. Developing your plan is where you decide what type of lease accounting solution is appropriate for your organization and size of lease portfolio. Research what options are and perform due diligence to narrow your list until you find the right solution. The solution you choose will dictate implementation plan and timeline. It will also impact how you will process your leases and apply your accounting policies and elections. One great way to begin researching which lease accounting solutions may be right for your organization is to establish a list of your functional requirements. What functionality is absolutely necessary, not just for accounting, but for the other departments that will process leases and lease transactions. And then what type of functions are nice to have? You actually may be surprised about what functionality is available. If you don't know what's available or what your organization may need, you can check out this functionality listing we've supplied here to get you started. We've also included a couple of other resources to help with the lease accounting solution research. I mean, we are a lease accounting provider, so of course this is what we'll have a lot of information on, but this is our software comparison guide. It lists and explains some questions to ask as you begin researching your options. And then finally, after you've narrowed your list down to the top 2 or 3 or 5 vendors, whatever number your organization requires for their purchasing process, you'll have them submit more exact information on specifications and functionality so that you can compare apples to apples. Some companies have each potential vendor submit an RFP. Here's a sample RFP already prepared with a lot of the information you may want to ask. Or if your organization does not already have one, or you can use this for ideas of what to include in the RFP you already have. As you're narrowing down your final solution, we've identified some of the more common considerations to think about for each type of solution. If you're using Excel, have you thought about how you will guarantee security, how you'll consolidate your data, and what controls you'll put on your reporting? If you have decided you'll use a software solution, you'll need to identify your must-haves versus your nice-to-haves. And then have you gotten approval to purchase the software and the budget, and then choose the software. If you know what lease accounting solution you want, that's great, but then the next steps would be identifying your lease portfolio, name your solution administrator, and determine which practical expedients you'll apply. And we've got some blog resources related to some of those as well. After selecting your organization's lease accounting solution, it's time to develop the plan for implementation. Again, this might sound daunting, but broken down into smaller steps, it's completely manageable. First, do you want to be compliant as of the adoption date? As of the first reporting period after the adoption date? Or maybe you're aiming for the best practice of the quarter before your adoption date to allow time for troubleshooting and reviewing your financial reporting and close procedures before you actually have to issue financial statements. Pick a target date and plan backwards from that. The resources you have available and the solution you choose will also play into this timeline. The next step is to determine what resources are available. Will the accounting team have a resource or resources dedicated for this project for a specific amount of time? Or will implementation be split between multiple teams to be completed in addition to their regular day jobs? Or will you use consultants? What is their timing and what does your organization need to do before your consultants get started? Factor in your target compliance date, your lease accounting solution, and your available resources to determine what your implementation plan and timeline looks like. As with the lease portfolio stage, revisiting your accounting policies and procedures is your last step. Before you begin inputting all your lease data into your solution, you'll want to finalize your various accounting policies and processes. Will you use a materiality threshold for determining which leases are in scope? This will save significant time on the front end by not having to enter all of your leases, especially if you have a significant number of small dollar value leases. Will you separate the lease and non-lease components? This will need to be decided beforehand, so you input the lease data according to the policies you establish. You'll also want to consider the accounting policies and processes for day 2 accounting after transition. Putting a little thought into these early in the process may save you time and effort further down the road. Things to think about as well: the input, review, and approval of new leases and lease transactions, and decisions regarding the software solution your organization chooses. Who will the administrators be? Who will input, change, or approve the leases? And how will the various roles be defined? Answering these questions upon setup will help day 2 accounting be a walk in the park as compared to the marathon transition was. Planning now helps execution later, which is the perfect segue into our last stage of the transition. Once you have gathered your lease inventory and developed your transition plan, the last stage is to execute your plan to compliance. Not to trivialize this last step at all, but many webinars and articles exist detailing how to calculate your transition entries and what policies to put into place. The main purpose of this presentation was to let you know if you have not started transitioning yet, you're not alone, and it's possible, but now is definitely the time. Execute your transition plan by 1, inputting and testing your lease data, 2, preparing your lease accounting transition entries, then confirming and reconciling the beginning balances. You want to do this step before recording any activity if your system allows it, so you can be sure to easily spot and correct any errors before you get started. Develop day 2 lease accounting outputs. You should have been thinking about these processes and policies, so this should be relatively easy pivot to maintenance entries. And then finally, you'd create your financial statements and required disclosures.